feel like the world wants to brainwash people when it comes to China. I've heard so many bad things about this country. I've heard that it's dirty, that nobody speaks English there, that people are super rude. Even while living in Singapore, I've heard so many bad things about China. And before visiting, I was a little bit stressful because so many people warned me, oh, nobody's gonna help you there, and like, you know, you gotta set up your Alipay, you gotta set up all those, like, you know, local stuff to get around the city so that you can survive there, and be aware that nobody's gonna help you there. I'm like, okay.
So I'm back from China, and I have been talking to a lot of people who want to know what it was like being in China. And I would normally say the rumors are true, they are living in the future. But then I started thinking about it. Actually, they're not living in the future. We have all of the same technological advances that they have. The difference between China and the West is distribution.
Right now on my For You page, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about the difference in prices when it comes to living in China versus living in the US, such as housing and food, transportation, the ease of things that are over there versus over here. And I want to say that I lived a pretty comfortable life over there before I had my kid. Again, I lived in China for 4 years. I was initially there for my PhD. Then I turned it into an English teacher. I had my daughter there as well. So my medical footprint there was also very, very low. It was very inexpensive, and I was treated very well.
3 things about my time living in China that would send Americans into a coma, but in a positive way. Part 1.
I feel like I have been brainwashed. So as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I am married to my husband, who is from China. He's Chinese, from Beijing. So in the last few years that we've been together, I have learned so much about China that I had absolutely no idea about. And then it was reinforced to me when we went to China for a month this February to March. How much I did not know and what I thought I knew about China is totally a lie.
When I first told friends I was moving to China, the reactions were mostly confusion and fear. Why China? It's dangerous there. Don't they hate Americans? But nothing could have prepared me for how wrong those assumptions were. From the moment I arrived, people welcomed me with curiosity and warmth. Locals offered help when I got lost. A taxi driver once refused my tip, saying, "You're our guest." Can you imagine that happening in New York? It's not just me. Americans who visit China often say the same thing. I was brainwashed. We believed we were free and they weren't, but in many ways, it's the opposite. In America, you're free to go bankrupt from a hospital bill. Free to be homeless despite working full-time. Free to live in fear every time your kid goes to school.
I feel like I have been brainwashed. So as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I am married to my husband, who is from China. He's Chinese, from Beijing. So in the last few years that we've been together, I have learned so much about China that I had absolutely no idea about. And then it was reinforced to me when we went to China for a month this February to March. How much I did not know and what I thought I knew about China is totally a lie. I don't know if that's just because I grew up in a small city in Saskatchewan, Canada, that we believe these things, or if this is just like a Canadian or Western thing that we've been told about China. But this is kind of actually so super embarrassing, but I grew up thinking that China was like a third world country. Like, the pictures and what I had visioned in my mind was there was so many people, it was dirty, there was smog everywhere, they ate disgusting food, like cats and dogs, they ate pets. What I thought was Chinese food was like our Western Chinese food, like sweet and sour chicken balls and fortune cookies, which is not a thing there apparently. That blew my mind. Yeah. That they weren't very friendly, that they're very pushy because there's so many people that they want to get in and out of lines fast. And all of that is so wrong. Like, that they're oppressed people because it's a communist country and they have like no rights. I feel so ridiculous admitting this because after being there, saying this now is just like, wow. But I feel like I owe it to my husband, the people of China, the people of Canada that have grown up thinking the way that I did, my in-laws that were so gracious to take care of us and house us for that month. I feel like I owe it to them to give my truthful opinion now that I have been in the country and experienced it firsthand myself. Their food is incredible, and I thought I was a picky eater, and I ate pretty much everything there. Small quantities because I'm not a big eater, but the food is so good. Every restaurant has like a 20-page menu. There are so many options, and now that I'm back in Canada, going out for supper just doesn't excite me anymore. It's expensive. The fruit, sometimes it's hit and miss if it's good enough, or good if it's good at all. I really miss the food there. The people were so nice and friendly. Even though they can't talk to me, they tried. They would wave and say like one or two words that they could in English. They tried to ask me questions because they were curious about like where I'm from. It's such a progressive country. I mean, I was in Shanghai, Beijing, and then I also went to Tianjin for a day. Super clean. Every building looks different. The architecture, they have like the more modern new buildings, and then they have their old traditional like temples and stuff, which are so beautiful. And their cars, like they have a lot more electric cars and different brands that we don't have here. Their phones, like we have the monopoly of iPhone there, they have Huawei and other things. Like I just feel like I have been lied to and missed out on so much of life. For the most part, the people don't seem like they feel oppressed. They actually enjoy that there's cameras everywhere because they feel more safe, is what I've picked up. And you do feel very safe in the country. Like I could go and walk around. I mean, I have no idea where I'm going and I can't talk to anybody, but I would feel safe wandering around aimlessly at night. You don't see like the gun problem. You don't see homeless people around. There isn't much for like garbage on the streets. Drugs are not a big issue there. You don't see people like passed out on the sidewalk, worried about if they've overdosed or not, or stepping on dirty needles. Like that's not a thing there. The subway station. I loved using the subway station. I could get anywhere I wanted for really cheap. It ended up being like $1 to get across, or $2 to get across Beijing on the subway. And it's safe and it's clean. Whereas in other places I've used the subway, like you see videos in the States, and I've used the subway in Europe, mostly in like London area, and wouldn't do it on my own. But China, I could do that no problem. And I have never seen anyone eating cats, dogs, bats. Like, that's crazy. The food markets, yes, they're busy, but they're not dirty. They're a very clean country. So I can only imagine, like, all of the other things I think about other countries and how those are wrong, too. I've gone to Europe a few times. I obviously need to get out and explore the world more, because the fact that I thought this was the normal and I know everything about every country is ridiculous.
3 things about my time living in China that would send Americans into a coma, but in a positive way. Part 1, let's get into it. Number 1 is the food delivery service on trains, and I'm not talking like they come up and down the aisle with a cart. They do. What I'm talking about is you scan a QR code, and when there's food that you want from an upcoming station, you can order it, and that station, the restaurant at that station, will have it prepped for you, and then they will bring it to the train, and then a lovely attendant will bring you your KFC or McDonald's or whatever you ordered from that station onto the train. Like, amazing. 2 is park culture. In China, you will always find people in the parks. They will never be empty. Whether it's early morning Tai Chi or late night aunties dancing, there's always something going on. You'll even find the older men like playing all these random games, doing these wild exercises that you didn't even know existed. But even that, it's like a wonderful place where people can just go and gather and hang out, which I know sounds kind of silly because obviously you can do that in the parks in America, but no one really does that culturally. It's not as much of a thing. It's hard to explain, but if you're ever going to China, just go visit the park and you will see what I mean. And for number 3, we have how clean these subway systems are. I mean, look at the floor. That is not like just for the Google photo, okay? That is actually what they all look like. You'll never find trash on the floor, nothing. And even better than that is, not unlike in New York City where you have to stand all the way back and worry about some crazy pushing you onto the tracks, the plexiglass here, or whatever sort of material that is from floor to ceiling. And it does not open until the subway car perfectly pulls into the space, and then the doors open, you get on, and then they reshut. So you never feel unsafe. It's always clean. It's just an amazing experience. Amazing.
Now, let's talk about something uniquely futuristic: food delivery on a train. In China, if you're on a long-distance high-speed train, you can simply open your phone, pick from dozens of nearby restaurants, and order a fresh meal. When your train reaches the next stop, a delivery person hands your meal to the train attendant, who walks it over to your seat. No fuss, no delay, just food. In America, even getting a hot meal on a plane is a luxury. And on a train? Good luck. You're stuck with vending machines or overpriced microwave burgers, if there's even a dining car. This isn't just about convenience. It's a metaphor for how China designs public systems around people's actual needs. It's thoughtful, efficient, scalable.
Hey folks, as somebody who studied China for over 10 years, lived in the country, and worked in both countries, it has been interesting this week to see a lot of Americans go over the Xiaohongshu and learn about China really for the first time. One thing I advise is that we shouldn't look at China with rose-colored glasses. Every country has its ups and downs, just like America, just like Europe. That doesn't mean that our grievances are not valid. Just remember that there is a wealth gap in China, just as there is a wealth gap in America. It's important to try to be as realistic as possible, especially when we see these things and we kind of get angry about it. The world is a lot more complicated than our history books in school or even the media likes us to believe. Again, no country is perfect. One way I like to think about this is that by looking at the world in too moralistic terms, we hurt our relationships with other people. You've seen how the media has kind of made us sometimes hate China through moral lenses and lose the human aspect of Chinese people. But it's also led to people in America hating their fellow Americans based on ideology. But if we think for a second, a lot of the arguments that the leftists are making come from the same place as the right wing. Maybe their conclusions are different, but I believe that they're actually both connected to China. For example, a lot of you guys complaining about the cost of living in China and the living state of Chinese people is connected to the jobs going over to China over the past 30 years due to American companies bringing manufacturing over there. And that's the same thing that the right wing in America has been complaining about for the past 20 years too. I don't know if Trump's plan is going to work, but this is an area of commonality between the two people. But this doesn't mean we should be hating people who did these things. We should be asking, first, was it possible for these jobs to remain in America? Because what would have happened if those manufacturing jobs stayed in America? Well, would the pollution be as bad as China? Would inflation be even worse now than we are complaining about at the moment? Another thing to remember is politics in the world is very important. Another reason that a lot of companies moved over to America was actually out of this plan that American and European governments believed that perhaps by making China more capitalist, they would become democratic. We also need to remember that in the 70s and 80s, we still had the Cold War, and the West believed that by being better friends with China, the Cold War would end, because China had become kind of not very good friends with Russia at that time. And eventually the Soviet Union did fall in the 1990s. Hopefully you are following this. I'm just saying that there are a lot of complications in the world, and a lot of the actions that were made that led to the modern day were done through calculations, sometimes based on morals. Not all of them were kind of based off this evil rich man kind of view. But feel free to argue with me in the comments about this. Goodbye.
What's up, TikTok? 10 years ago, I left the U.S. and came to China, and I've been living here since 2012. And I just want to give you a little bit of my experience or my advice or my ideas of an American living in China for 10 years. And I see what's going on back home, and it saddens me. China is not our enemy, period. They'll throw words around like communism, communist, but you got to realize America started off also as a communist country. This word communism is not a bad word. It's what we all partake of every day. Back home, if you're a Christian and you take communion, the word comes from communism. It's the same thing, just sharing. When you drink that little grape juice and pretend like it's blood of Jesus, you're communion. Part of communism, same thing. If you go to a picnic or a barbecue, you bring something to eat, you share with everybody else what you're doing, you're communing. You're being part of a communist organization. You're being part of communism. So this is not a bad word, and it's being misrepresented all the time. When China started out many years ago, China was very poor. After the Japanese invasion, they had to rebuild. So they had to be a communist party because they had to share. For a village to survive, they had to share. That means everybody had to bring something to put into the pot and share with each other. Now, today, China is only communism by name. It's very much a capitalist country, very much part of a capitalist country. Very much a mixed economy. 10 years ago, I came here. Now I own a business here, bought a house, got married, and I was able to do all that as a part of capitalism. So don't be fooled when they're throwing these words around like communism this. Communism and authoritarianism are two different things. Yes, China is authoritarianism. However, America is on its way to becoming authoritarianism too. If you don't stop it. So what's the idea? What's the point? What's the idea behind trying to go to war with China? It makes no fucking sense. You guys got outsmarted. Our government was outsmarted. You allowed China to show the truth, how true democracy is made. Going abroad to other countries and making deals, not going around to other countries and making war. You see how it's done? See how it's supposed to be done? And so now you feel embarrassed because China showed you how to do it the right way, and now you want to go to war. Don't let them do it, people. Because I guarantee you, nobody wants to fight in another war. Remember when Bush took us to war with Iraq, Afghanistan, and it was China that bailed us out after Bush broke our economy, made us poor, and we got all that money from China. Imagine somebody borrows money from you, and then it's time to pay them back, so you start calling them your enemy. That's some cowardice bullshit right there. No, they're not our enemy. Your enemies don't loan you money. It's fucking pathetic. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent free thinker. So I'm not a slave mind like most of you, or like, should say, some of you. So you better fight it. You better do what you can to avoid this shit from happening, because nobody wants to go to another war, especially one that they cannot win. We lost a war to people running around in the desert with sandals and pickup trucks. You really think you're going to win a war against China and Russia? So people are not going to go fight in that battle. And then on top of that, your country is going to start to bring back the draft, because nobody's going to want to join the military. Y'all better wake up. China's a great place, and they are not our enemy.
In most American cities, public parks are hit or miss. Some are serene. Others feel neglected or unsafe, especially after dark. But in China, parks are part of everyday life, especially for the elderly. At dawn, they practice Tai Chi. By afternoon, you'll find people dancing, playing chess, singing karaoke, and even matchmaking for their kids. It's not an activity, it's culture. One American traveler said, "It felt like a festival that never ended." There was this sense of community I had never felt in any park in the States. Parks in China aren't spaces of isolation. They're spaces of interaction. And the best part? They're safe, even at midnight.
As a Chinese, I heard that many of you believe that in China we have a social credit system, which means that if you do something wrong and if you say something bad about the government, you get your points off, and the cameras on the streets are there to supervise you. What? No, no such a thing at all. The first time I heard of this is from you. I was like, what the fuck? If it's really the case, it's with our Alipay, like it's the PayPal in your country. We do have that system in that application, but you get your points off only because you forgot to return your sharing back power, or you failed to return the money back. Except of this, in my whole life, I've never heard of such a thing. And the answer will be the same if you go to ask any Chinese.
I woke up this morning to a pale lady crying on the internet because she now discovered that China has it so easy over there and how messed up we really have it here in America. And that really put things into a certain perspective for me, right? Because now, especially with this current administration that we finna get ready to be under in a couple of days, and just seeing all of the chaos that's already going on and knowing the economic plan and how they finna get ready to tax the poor and give it all to the rich and yada, yada, yada. I just realized that this is probably finna be the first time in history where white people is really finna see what we've been going through this whole time. This is probably finna be the first time that a big, large group of white Americans is really finna get ready to experience what we've been experiencing. And I can't lie, I can't wait for it.
I feel like the world wants to brainwash people when it comes to China. I've heard so many bad things about this country. I've heard that it's dirty, that nobody speaks English there, that people are super rude. Even while living in Singapore, I've heard so many bad things about China. And before visiting, I was a little bit stressful because so many people warned me, oh, nobody's gonna help you there, and you gotta set up your Alipay, you gotta set up all those local stuff to get around the city so that you can survive there, and be aware that nobody's gonna help you there. I'm like, okay. I hope I'll survive there. But when I arrived in China, everyone was just super nice to me. Yes, people don't speak English, but they try their best to translate things for you in order to help you. They're like, oh, I don't speak English, I'm so sorry, but here's the translator. Where do you want to go? How can I help you? People are just super helpful in China, and I don't know if it's me and I got so lucky to see only the positive things in China, but I'm definitely looking forward to come back and visit.
Nowhere is the difference in public life more glaring than in the subway systems. The New York City subway system is infamous, unreliable, chaotic, often dangerous. But in Shanghai or Beijing, you walk into an air-conditioned, brightly lit station with high-speed gates, phone charging ports, quiet platforms, and not a piece of trash in sight. Security guards scan your bags, but it's fast and respectful. Everything runs on time, and you feel safe. At any hour, alone or with kids. Many Americans recorded their subway experiences on social media. Why does the Shanghai metro look like a space station? One asked. Another said, it's like I time traveled 20 years into the future.
Right now on my For You page, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about the difference in prices when it comes to living in China versus living in the US. Such as housing and food, transportation, the ease of things that are over there versus over here. And I want to say that I lived a pretty comfortable life over there before I had my kid. Again, I lived in China for 4 years. I was initially there for my PhD. Then I turned it into an English teacher. I had my daughter there as well. So my medical footprint there was also very, very low. It was very inexpensive and I was treated very well. If you want a story on how my pregnancy and my birth over there was, let me know down below and I'll be happy to give that to you. So when I was there, scholarship was about 3,500 kwai. And the scholarship also had an additional 2,000 kwai or renminbi on there as well if I lived off campus. So a total of 5,500 renminbi per month was for my scholarship funding. 2,000 was to help with housing opportunities if I moved off campus, and that was based off of my type of scholarship that I was on. And 3,500 was the living scholarship that they gave you to help you with textbooks, for food, if you needed to go shopping. So that 5,500 was about 750 USD, because at that time it was 7 kwai to every $1. I rented, my first apartment that I rented from off campus was a 3-bedroom, and I rented it with my friend that was from Bangladesh, and I rented it with a Chinese friend. So my bedroom was 900 kwai, so it was only like $100. The second apartment that I moved to was a 2-bedroom apartment for 1,800, and the last one that I moved to was also a 2-bedroom apartment for 1,900 renminbi, or about $260 USD. Now, when I was renting out an apartment, even though that sounds fine with $250, $260 USD per month, I worked through an agent, a realtor agent that worked with foreigners specifically. And so what would happen was that we would pay our initial rent, and it was every 3 months that we paid. And for some apartments, depending on your income, and if you're a foreigner, you would have to pay up to 6 months in advance before you can move in. So I would pay every 3 months to my agent, and my agent would pay the landlord or the laoban each month. I have talked previously before about WeChat, Weixin. Weixin is an app that's very similar to WhatsApp, but better. Much better. It has it doesn't scroll like TikTok, but they do have an option where you can do videos like that, the little shorts. But it basically has a whole bunch of apps in there. It has your Taobao, it has your Alibaba, your Zhifubao, has your Didi. So these are like eating services, shopping services, payment services, bank access. You can get a delivery done within the same day. I truly believe if WhatsApp wanted to be a lot better, that they should take some initiative from Weixin and see what things from it that they can add to it. The only problem is if you upgrade WeChat, then you are going to have more space on your phone. So the concept of being able to live much better in China compared to America is because of the change in the USD to the renminbi and how much more affordable in that sense compared to coming from a very expensive place. I was able to buy fresh fruits and vegetables every single day while I was in China. I was able to just leave my house, and in the evening we would have all these shop carts on the street with fruits and food and vegetables that you can go buy. And if you wanted to try a little bit, depending on the laoban, you were allowed to just try a small sample and then make a purchase. I made my own little community there. So in the evening, the ayi's or the older women would come out and they would do a traditional Chinese dance, or they would just do exercise out there. You would see the elderly walking around with their grandkids. You would see moms out there with their kids as well during the evening. Basically, the whole community would come alive at that time. And they would always look out for me and my daughter while we were out there. They were always so friendly, and that's how I was able to learn Chinese. I completely immersed myself inside the community because I wanted to know what was going on around me. I wanted to know who was talking about me. I wanted to be able to bargain with money. I wanted to be able to get somewhere. I wanted to be able to do everything on my own. Me being able to read Chinese was a bit more difficult, but there were a few key characters that I always remembered when it came to what I was looking for. For example, if I was trying to order something in a restaurant, I knew a few key words like rice, I knew noodles, I knew what soup looked like, I knew what spicy was, I knew what the different types of meat symbols were if they didn't have pictures there. I learned so much from my fellow colleagues as well when I was doing my education there. They were so kind and opening. Again, Chinese hospitality reminds me very much of Southern and Caribbean, very deep Southern and Caribbean hospitality on steroids as well. Obviously, they have a hierarchy and they teach these inside the school. It was just such a wonderful experience. I wouldn't move back there again because I'm already established here in the US. And there's a few things that might not be beneficial for my daughter at this age, but maybe when she's older. But I would definitely go back to visit for a long-term period, like definitely over a month. If you have any more questions for me down below, please leave them and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
From mobile payments to smart cities, China has embraced the future faster than most of the Western world. You can pay for everything with your phone, from rent to a single peach on a street cart. Cities like Shenzhen have facial recognition access in buildings, AI-driven traffic systems, and zero-cash economies. Yet back in the US, many stores still prefer cash or require swipe cards. Infrastructure crumbles while political infighting stalls everything. So when Americans visit China and see these realities, they're not just impressed, they're angry. Angry that they've been told China is a failing system. Angry that progress was hidden from them. And many are even wondering, did we become the place we warned others about?
So I'm back from China, and I have been talking to a lot of people who want to know what it was like being in China. And I would normally say, the rumors are true, they are living in the future. But then I started thinking about it. Actually, they're not living in the future. We have all of the same technological advances that they have. The difference between China and the West is distribution. In the West, all the new fun stuff is premium, right? You have to pay extra for that. So that means only wealthy people or people with disposable income get it. In China, a few of these technologies, not all of them, but just a few of them are deemed too important to capitalize. So they distribute that. That gets put out to everybody. So in aggregate, what that does is that makes everybody feel like in China, they are advancing beyond us in the West because it is a more even, and it really is just a handful of technologies. That's good management.
When you read anything about China, especially in the West, you have to be really critical about it because I don't think enough people understand that we live in a time where the West is trying to do everything it can to demonize China because they want to manufacture your consent for a war. And this is because of two reasons. One, because the military-industrial complex has an incredible amount of profit to gain from stoking a military conflict. And this isn't anything new because since World War II, the US has always tried to justify an endless stream of murder and massacres worldwide in places like Vietnam, the Middle East, and countless other countries under the guise of human rights when it was always about capitalism. And reason number two, xenophobia is used to distract you from the failures of the American government, and we can see this with COVID. Instead of passing pandemic aid or coming up with infrastructure for COVID testing, the government passed a record defense budget for 2021 out of anti-China hysteria. How is vulgar spending on militarization going to do anything to fight COVID?
So what does this all mean? It means Americans are starting to wake up. Not to praise China blindly, but to question what they've been taught. If everything we assumed about another country turned out to be false, what else have we been misled about? Maybe the real revolution isn't political, it's personal. It's about unlearning what we thought we knew and daring to look deeper. So next time you hear someone say China is the enemy, ask them, have you ever been there? Because for many who have, the only thing they regret is not going sooner.